I knew something was off the moment I saw her marching down the dock in her wedge sandals like she owned the bay. Deborah Ranklin, HOA president, self-appointed queen of the neighborhood, and an Olympic-level complainer. I was tying off my fishing boat, the Salt Warden, after an early morning run when I heard that voice sharp enough to cut fiberglass. "Harrison Newell, you cannot park that thing here." I turned my head slowly, tugging my cap down a little. "Morning, Deborah. You sleep all right, or did your HOA handbook keep you up again?" Her face tightened like someone had just slapped lemon juice in her coffee. "This is private community property, and boats are not allowed to be docked here overnight. You're in direct violation of HOA guidelines, Section 14, Paragraph 3. I gave the rope one last tug and stood up straight. "You sure you want to go there?" Deborah pointed her phone at my boat like it was a loaded weapon. "I'm documenting this. This will go on the record." "You'll be fined." I leaned against the piling, calm and completely unbothered. "I own the dock rights, Deborah." She blinked like I'd just spoken in ancient Greek. "Excuse me. I bought the rights to this dock and ramp 5 years ago. It was part of the property deal, deeded. Filed with the county. You can look it up if you want." Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again like a fish gasping for air. "That's impossible. The HOA owns all shared waterfront spaces." I pulled a folded document from my tackle box and handed it to her. "Not this one. This dock and the boat ramp fall outside the HOA's jurisdiction. The previous owner opted out before your little kingdom was established." She snatched the paper, eyes darting over it, color draining from her face. This isn't valid. I'll have our lawyer review it." "Go ahead. I already had a county attorney confirm it last year when your board accidentally tried to bill me for maintenance." She flinched at that one. "Yeah, I remembered that little stunt. They tried to sneak a $400 fee onto my quarterly dues. Said it was for shoreline preservation. I sent them a notarized letter and never heard about it again until now, apparently." Deborah tried to recover. "You're still disrupting the neighborhood aesthetic. That boat is an eyesore." I looked at the Salt Warden. "White hull, polished chrome, clean deck, easily the nicest rig in the bay. Funny, Chad down the road has a rusted-out jet ski half-sunk behind his house, and you haven't mentioned that once." "That's different," she snapped. "How?" She hesitated. "He's on the board." There it was, I laughed. "So that's how this works. Board buddies get a pass, but I tie up my boat on my own dock, and suddenly it's a federal case. I'm warning you, Harrison, you keep pushing this and things will get difficult for you." I narrowed my eyes. "No, Deborah. You keep pushing this, and you're going to find out the hard way what happens when you abuse authority. You're out of your league." She turned on her heel and stormed off, heels clacking against the wood like she was trying to summon a demon. I watched her go, then looked down at the water, shaking my head. I had a feeling this wasn't the end of it, and I was right. 2 days later, I came home to find a neon orange sticker slapped across the windshield of my truck. It read, "Unauthorized vehicle subject to towing." The truck was in my own driveway. I stood there for a full minute just staring at it. The absurdity was almost impressive. They'd crossed from petty to reckless without even blinking. I peeled the sticker off slowly, careful not to leave residue. Then I walked around to the passenger side and spotted a second one. Same message, same color, double effort. Someone was trying to make a point. I didn't need to guess who was behind it, but I needed confirmation, so I walked across the street to Walt's place. He was retired Navy, spent most of his afternoons on the porch pretending he didn't hear neighborhood drama, but his hearing was better than a hunting dog's. "Walt," I said, stepping up onto his porch. "You see who tagged my truck?" He didn't look away from the crossword in his lap. A golf cart rolled up around noon. Blue shirt, white visor. Didn't get close enough to see the face, but she had that stiff little handbag like she's hiding a taser and a Bible in there. "That sounds about right." He finally looked up. "She's escalating. You need to get ahead of this before she tries something beyond stickers." "I think she already has," I said, pulling out a folded envelope from my back pocket. "Got this in the mailbox earlier." Walt unfolded it and read silently, then he let out a low whistle. "Violation notice for improper vehicle storage, obstruction of community view, and visual degradation of property values." That last one's new. Yeah, none of it applies, but she's stacking fake violations. She wants a paper trail, he muttered. Stack enough of these and she'll try to lien your property. That got my attention. Even if she knows the charges are bogus, she's banking on you folding before it goes that far. Most people do. That night, I installed 2 weatherproof trail cameras, one facing the driveway, the other aimed at the dock. Motion-activated night vision time-stamped footage. I wasn't going to play defense anymore. I was going to watch. It didn't take long. The following evening, just after sunset, I caught movement on the dock camera. A figure in a windbreaker and visor stepped onto the planks with a clipboard in hand. She crouched down and measured the distance between the boat and the end of the dock. Then she pulled something from her bag, an official-looking seal, and slapped a bright yellow placard onto one of the dock posts. I zoomed in later when reviewing the footage. The placard read, "Unsafe structure closure pending inspection." The next morning, I called the county inspector's office. I laid it all out: my ownership of the dock, the recent targeting, and now this forged inspection notice. The clerk on the phone was quiet for a moment, then said, "That seal doesn't come from us. We don't issue those unless there's a filed complaint and an official inspection. Can you send someone to look at it? I have video. We'll dispatch someone today." By noon, a county truck pulled up outside. A man in a green vest stepped out, clipboard in hand, and walked with me down to the dock. I showed him the footage on my tablet, every frame with clear angles and time-stamped evidence. He studied the seal on the post, then peeled it off carefully. "This is a counterfeit. Whoever printed this had access to a high-quality press. That's a criminal offense." What kind of offense are we talking? Forgery of a government document, tampering with private property, possibly impersonating a county official if she claimed to be one. "I'll file a report." Deborah didn't show her face for 2 days. Then, just after breakfast on Saturday, a letter arrived by certified mail. This one was thicker than the last. Inside was a formal notice of intent to levy a lien against my property for non-compliance with HOA standards. There were 5 listed infractions, all of them fabricated. I scanned the fine print. The board had voted on the action in a special session, but there was no mention of a date or quorum. That was illegal. I called my cousin, Vanessa. She was a municipal attorney in Tallahassee and owed me a favor for helping her fix up her lake house last year. "Can they do this?" I asked. "Not without procedural transparency. They have to notify you of any meeting where your property is discussed, and they need documented evidence of any violation. If they skip that, you've got grounds for a cease and desist. What if the violations are completely made up? Then you've got grounds for a civil suit and possibly enough to involve the state licensing board for HOA management." I filed the cease and desist the next morning, hand-delivered with a signature confirmation. That afternoon, I got a knock at the door. It was Anthony, one of the HOA board members. He looked uneasy, like someone had poured ice water down his collar. "I didn't know she went that far," he said before I could speak. "She told us you were refusing to cooperate with safety regulations. Said the county was backing her. She forged a government seal and posted it on my dock." His face went pale. "That's a felony. She listed 5 violations in a vote none of you were notified about." He rubbed the back of his neck. "I never signed off on anything. If she filed that as a board decision, that's fraud." I handed him a printed copy of the county report confirming the seal was fake, along with a still from the video. "I'm giving you a chance to step away from this before it pulls everyone down." He nodded slowly. "I'll call an emergency session." Without her. The meeting happened that night in Walt's garage. Since the clubhouse was technically under her authority, 5 out of 7 board members showed up. I brought the footage, the documents, and the county report. After 30 minutes, the board voted to suspend Deborah from all HOA activities pending investigation. Anthony hand-delivered a notice to her house before sunrise, but she didn't go quietly. The next morning, her husband showed up at my door in a rage, demanding to know why I was trying to destroy his wife's reputation. I didn't bother arguing. I just handed him a copy of the county investigator's report and the forged seal. He stopped talking halfway through the second paragraph. He left without another word. By evening, the board released a statement disavowing all recent violation notices and confirming that my dock and boat were outside HOA jurisdiction. It should have ended there. But Deborah wasn't done yet, not even close. The silence didn't last long. Exactly 8 days after her suspension, Deborah Ranklin pulled off something so unhinged, so desperate, it made the forged county placard look like amateur hour. It started with a buzz at 5:42 a.m. A neighbor, Carla, who lived 3 doors down and ran sunrise yoga by the beach, called me in a panic. "Your dock's gone," she whispered like she was reporting a crime scene. "I mean, not gone, but there's a barge, men with power tools. They're tearing it apart." I was out the door in under 60 seconds. By the time I reached the waterline, the sun was barely above the mangroves. A massive flat-bottomed barge sat just off my shoreline, 2 men in dirty overalls hauling planks and unbolting railings from my dock. They had already stripped the southeast corner, and one of them was firing up a circular saw. I shouted before my feet hit the bottom step. "Hey, get off my property." The taller one looked up, expression blank. "Work order from the HOA. Says the dock's condemned." "Who gave the order?" He scratched his head. "Deborah Ranklin." I felt my jaw tighten. "She's suspended, no authority. This dock is deeded private property. You're trespassing." The shorter guy looked uneasy now. "We're just the crew, man. Turn off the saw." "Step off the dock, now." He didn't argue. They both backed off and stood on the barge, unsure what to do. I took out my phone and called the sheriff's non-emergency line. I wasn't about to let this turn into a shouting match. 10 minutes later, Deputy Kerrigan pulled up in his cruiser. He stepped out slow, hand resting on his vest and eyes scanning the scene. I handed him the folder I kept in my truck: original deed, county tax map, and the cease and desist letter from my lawyer. He flipped through the pages without a word. "They started dismantling it with no warrant, no authorization, and no legal right to be here," I said. "The HOA has no jurisdiction over this structure. The president, acting alone, ordered this without board approval." He nodded once, then turned to the workers. "Gentlemen, pack up your equipment. You're done here. If either of you steps off that barge onto this dock again today, you'll be arrested for trespassing." The tall one threw up his hands. "We didn't know. We just got told to show up and start work." Kerrigan waved them off, then he looked at me. "Can I see the video from this morning?" I pulled up the footage from my dock camera. The barge had arrived just before 5:30. Deborah wasn't in the shot, but a small skiff had dropped off a woman in a hooded windbreaker who walked the perimeter and pointed out specific planks to remove. Her face wasn't visible, but her gait and posture were unmistakable. "That enough to press charges?" I asked. "Not yet," Kerrigan said. "But if you can get me proof she authorized this invoice, email, even a work order with her signature, we're looking at felony property damage and criminal trespass. Possibly conspiracy, depending on how she arranged this." At that point, I wasn't angry. I was focused. I spent the next 3 hours calling every dock repair company within a 30-mile radius. On the 5th call, I hit gold. The manager at Gulf Marine Services confirmed they'd sent a crew out to my address based on a rush order signed by Deborah Ranklin, HOA president. He forwarded me the scanned work order. It was on HOA letterhead. It had her name, her signature a real one this time, and the phrase "urgent deconstruction required due to imminent collapse risk." No engineer's report, no inspection attached, just her word. I sent it to Kerrigan immediately. 2 days later, she was arrested at her front step. The charges: criminal mischief, unauthorized destruction of private property, and impersonation of a municipal authority. They added fraud once they vetted the work order and confirmed she used a defunct HOA bank account to pay the deposit. The arrest wasn't quiet. Half the neighborhood stood on their porches, pretending to check their sprinklers or walk their dogs, watching as Deborah was led into the cruiser with her sweater pulled up over her face. Her husband stood in the doorway, arms crossed, saying nothing. The aftermath sent shockwaves through the board. The remaining members held a vote to permanently remove her from all HOA functions. The treasurer resigned the next morning. Turned out he'd signed off on the fake account withdrawal without asking questions, and he wanted no part of what was coming next. But it was the annual meeting that really changed everything. Held in the community clubhouse, the first time it had ever reached full capacity, the meeting started tense. People wanted answers. They wanted accountability. And they wanted assurances that no one else in leadership was going to go rogue with a power drill and a fake title. I brought a proposal. "I'm asking for a revision to the bylaws," I said, standing at the front with a printed copy of the new clause. "Every major action by the board must be documented, voted on in open session, and filed with the county if it affects property rights. No more secret votes. No more emergency sessions without quorum." There was a ripple of nodding heads. Then, from the back, someone stood up. Carla from the yoga group. "No offense to anyone here," she said, "but I think we need people with actual backbone on this board." "I nominate Harrison Newell for president," I laughed. "I didn't come here to run for anything." "That's exactly why you should," someone else called out. I didn't accept. I declined gracefully. But I did agree to serve as an advisor, unpaid, unofficial, but with full access to records and the authority to draft future policy reforms. I wanted no part of running the place, but I wasn't going to sit back while someone like Deborah tried to rebuild her little empire. The dock was repaired within a week, courtesy of the HOA's insurance after the liability claim went through. The barge crew even came back this time to help put the planks back in place, free of charge. One of them handed me a beer when it was done. "Hope we don't see this place again," he said with a grin. I raised the bottle. "If you do, bring a fishing rod instead of a saw." Over the next month, the neighborhood changed. Subtle things. The board meetings became public events, not secretive huddles. People started walking down to the shoreline again, chatting on the dock without whispering like they were being watched. As for Deborah, she was facing multiple charges and a civil lawsuit from me personally. Her attorney tried to settle, but I wasn't interested in money. I wanted a court ruling that made it crystal clear. Private property isn't something an HOA can rewrite with a clipboard and a bad attitude. Her trial was set for the fall, and I planned to be there every single day. I didn't win anything dramatic, no TV interviews, no parades, but I kept my dock. I kept my boat, and I made sure no neighbor would ever have to wonder if the people in charge were working for them or against them. And the next time someone steps onto my property with a clipboard, they're going to think twice. Because now, the whole neighborhood knows who owns the dock. 3 weeks after Deborah's arrest, the dock had returned to normal, but the neighborhood still buzzed. Not about the boat or the dock anymore. That controversy had been settled like a hammer on glass, but about what came next. The whispers weren't about HOA politics anymore, but about what investigators had found once they started digging into the HOA's financials. Deborah's unauthorized work order turned out to be the tip of something much darker. I wasn't the one who uncovered it. That credit went to a quiet guy named Martin Heller, a forensic accountant who had bought the corner house last winter. He kept to himself, and most people assumed he was retired. But after the board voted to audit the HOA's books, Martin volunteered to help verify the treasurer's past reports. A week later, he showed up at my door holding a thick folder and a face like someone who had just read a confession letter. "I need a witness," he said. "You're the only one I trust not to sweep this under the rug." I walked him inside and set the folder on the kitchen table. "What am I looking at?" He pointed to a series of bank statements. Over the last 18 months, there were multiple transfers out of the HOA's account, not to contractors, not to maintenance, to something called Baytown Holdings. Never heard of it. You wouldn't. It's a shell company. Registered in Delaware. Guess whose name is on the registration? I didn't answer. He turned the page. There it was in black and white, President Deborah Ranklin. She was funneling HOA dues into her own holding account, I said, over $72,000, spread out in small transfers. Most under $1,000 each, enough to avoid suspicion, but consistent. Martin pulled out a second sheet. She also used HOA funds to pay for landscaping on a property outside the neighborhood, a rental house she owns near the marina. I leaned back in my chair. She was laundering money through her own community board. And if I had to guess, Martin said, she never thought anyone would bother checking. No audit trail, no second signatory. The treasurer didn't even catch it because she forged co-approval signatures on the ledger. I looked at the pages again, each line screaming fraud in plain numbers. "We take this to the sheriff," Martin nodded. "Already have. I just want someone else to confirm it before it grows legs." The sheriff's office moved fast. A subpoena hit the HOA's bank within 48 hours. Deborah, still out on bail for the dock incident, was about to face a much steeper fall. When investigators swept her home, they found more than bank records. They found HOA checks pre-signed and hidden in a lockbox. They found a burner phone used to communicate with that barge crew. And they found a printed list of homeowners highlighted in red and blue, marked with notes like "soft target" and "will fold under pressure." I was on that list. So was a 74-year-old widow named Arlene, who'd been fined 3 separate times last year for having non-neutral patio furniture. The state prosecutor held a press conference within the week. Deborah Ranklin was being charged with embezzlement, wire fraud, criminal conspiracy, and evidence tampering. Her bail was revoked. She was taken into custody without incident, though I heard from someone near the courthouse that she tried to claim the entire HOA board had been in on it. They weren't. Anthony, the board's vice president, gave a statement later that week. "We failed to recognize the extent of the manipulation at play. We took procedural trust for granted. That will never happen again." The board resigned en masse that night. The county appointed a temporary oversight panel to manage operations while new elections were organized. They also brought in an independent management company to handle all financials until the dust settled. 1 week later, I received a letter in the mail, not from the HOA, but from the county clerk's office. It was an official request to testify in the upcoming case as a primary witness. The trial date was set for mid-October. I spent the weeks leading up to it reviewing everything I had: video footage, work orders, letters, even that original forged seal. When the day arrived, the courtroom was packed. Not with reporters, this wasn't some national spectacle, but with neighbors. Dozens of them, some I barely knew, others who had been on the receiving end of Deborah's compliance measures for years. They filled the benches like a silent jury, there to see justice finally put on a leash. I was called on the second day. The prosecutor walked me through the events from the first false notice all the way to the fake demolition order. I spoke clearly, naming dates, times, and actions. I handed over copies of everything. When they showed the security footage from the dock, the courtroom was dead quiet. Deborah never looked at me. Her attorney tried to paint the entire thing as a misunderstanding. A series of administrative mistakes and miscommunications between the board and the president. But the moment Martin took the stand and explained the financial trail with the clarity of a surgeon describing a tumor, it was over. The jury took less than 2 hours to deliberate. Guilty on all counts. The sentence was harsh but fair. 5 years in state prison with no eligibility for parole before 30 months. Restitution to the HOA for the full amount embezzled, plus damages. A permanent ban from serving on any HOA or community board anywhere in the state. The judge added one final note before the gavel dropped. This was not a case of leadership gone awry. It was a calculated abuse of power targeting the very people the defendant was supposed to serve. This court will not tolerate such manipulation cloaked in civic responsibility. When it was over, I stepped outside into the sunlight. Anthony was waiting near the courthouse steps, hands in his pockets. "I don't know if we'll ever get the trust back," he said. "You don't need to get it back," I replied. "You need to rebuild it from scratch, no shortcuts this time." He gave me a nod and walked off down the steps. The neighborhood held a block party the following weekend. Not a celebration, no one felt like cheering over what had happened, but more like a gathering of survivors. People shared stories. Some laughed for the first time in weeks. Others just shook their heads in disbelief. Carla brought cookies. Walt grilled hot dogs. Even Martin showed up with a folding chair and his usual quiet stare. No one talked about fines or violations. Just weather, fishing, and the upcoming fall festival. It felt like a neighborhood again. The dock, still there, still sturdy. And now, freshly painted with a new sign at the ramp. Private dock-deeded access trespassers will be recorded, reported, and remembered. I didn't make the sign. One of the neighbors did, left it there anonymously. I left it up, because around here we remember, not just the bad. But the ones who stood up held the line and made sure no one would ever try to take what wasn't theirs again. And if they do, well, they'll be stepping onto the wrong dock.